Hello, welcome to episode 4 of How to Win a World Cup. In this episode, we're going to have a look at critical non-essentials. One of the most successful ideas in the history of English rugby didn't come from a rugby pitch. It came from a dentist chair. To be precise, from a gloriously eccentric dentist in a quiet suburb of Brisbane, who one evening picked up a hammer and smashed his own reception desk to pieces. His name was Dr. Paddy Lund, and he'd worked something out. No one, he realised, actually understood dentistry. No one who sat in his chair had the faintest idea whether the work he was doing in their mouth was any good. So what did they judge their dentist on? Everything else, he said. The waiting room, the welcome, the way it all felt. So Lund decided to do something dramatic. He tore up the rule book. He got rid of the reception desk because he didn't want people queuing at it. He put in a great silver cappuccino machine and Royal Doulton china. He had classical music wafting through the area where people waited and soft lounges where they could sip tea. He stopped telling patients their checkup was due and started inviting them for afternoon tea. I travelled out to Australia to meet him to discuss his philosophy. He told me that he'd even sacked 4/5 of his customer base because they made him miserable, and he kept only the patients he liked. And for a man who had been close to giving the whole thing up, he became one of the most talked about dentists in the world. Lund had a phrase for the cappuccino machine and the china and the music. He called them the critical non-essentials, the things that are not essential to the actual job, drilling a tooth, but are absolutely critical to whether people think you're any good at it. On the other side of the world, a rugby coach read about this dentist, got on a plane to Brisbane to meet him and fell completely in love with the idea. That coach, of course, was Clive Woodward, and the critical non-essentials became the beating heart of how he won a World Cup. His belief was simple, and he said it like a drumbeat. Detail, detail, detail. Winning, he always insisted, was about inches, not miles. You do not find one enormous thing that wins your World Cup. You found 1,000 tiny things, and you do every single one of them a fraction better than everyone else. He didn't believe that any player could suddenly get 30% better. How could they? So he set his fitness man, a chap called Dave Reddin, remember that name? A different task entirely. Find me as many 1% improvements as you possibly can. No improvement is too small. Stack up enough of them and they carry you to the top. And Clive set about making improvements and making life as good as it could possibly be for the players. Instead of a fancy cappuccino machine, Clive built a full-size rugby pitch in the grounds of the team's hotel. An actual international pitch laid by the head groundsman from Twickenham, on land where horses used to roam, so these players could walk a few steps from their beds and be training. Who puts a test pitch in the garden of a country hotel? Clive Woodward. In that hotel kitchen, they made so many egg white omelettes to the exact specification of the team nutritionists that they gave up separating the eggs by hand and started buying egg whites ready prepared in huge tubs. Picture that. An entire World Cup campaign, and somewhere in it is a man whose job used to be cracking eggs all day, made redundant by a bucket of egg whites. When the hotel had nowhere near the pitch to store the kit and the Rugby Football Union refused to pay for somewhere, Clive rang an old friend who knew about marquees, and within days a tent the size of a barn stood beside the pitch. It was so big they put an entire gym inside it and had the players in there lifting weights at 7 o'clock every morning. When he wanted the hotel chef to come to the World Cup and the union wouldn't pay, he simply persuaded Uncle Ben's, the rice company, to foot the bill instead. And then there was the eye coach. Clive hired a woman named Cheryl Calder, whose entire job was to train the players' eyes. No other rugby team on earth had such a thing. And there was a great deal of sniggering when he announced it, but his logic was unanswerable. If you can train every other muscle in the body, he asked, why on earth can't you train the eyes? She built a programme the players worked through on their laptops, level by level. And can you guess who worked hardest at it, who drove himself through every level? Johnny Wilkinson, the man whose boot would win the World Cup. Clive Woodward even changed the players' shirts. He asked Nike to design shirts so tight an opponent could not grab a fistful and drag a player down. They worked, but they were almost impossible to get on and off. And the sight of these enormous men peeling each other out of their kit after a match was a very odd mixture of disconcerting and amusing. The lengths he would go to for these small changes were incredible. On tour in South Africa, he decided that the hotel the team had been handed simply wasn't good enough, so he moved the entire squad, locks, props and all, into one of the most glamorous hotels in the country, and he paid for it all on his own credit card. very nearly losing his job over it. When his players were scattered across the country at different clubs and struggled to stay in touch, he talked a computer company into giving every single one of them a laptop so they could swap training plans and speak to one another. He had the whole squad run on what he called Lombardy time, after the great American football coach, which meant arriving everywhere 10 minutes early. Every time, no exceptions. This also taps into his experiences with the Marines, who were also on time for everything. And those who know him have lost count of the number of times he offered to remortgage his own family home to pay for something he believed would give England an edge. This is not a man dabbling in detail, this is a man who knows it makes a difference. Now, of course, none of these things on their own wins you a match. Of course not. A big rose on the side of the bus and fancy new shirts don't win matches. But add up hundreds and hundreds of these tiny things and you'll give yourself a critical advantage. The detail ran so deep in him that he monitors himself in the same way. I used to meet him once a week when I was writing his book. And he'd always have a ham sandwich. I'd pursue the menu and look for the most glamorous, exciting thing on there, and he'd ordered the same thing every time. The reason? To keep himself in work mode, to save himself making a decision, to focus all of himself on the task in hand. That's the level we're talking about. Now, when Dave Redden left for the Football Association, he took Clive's obsession straight into the England football team. So the footballers got their own version of everything you've just heard. They had their own performance chef travelling with the squad, a whole science of sleep and recovery, special mattresses shipped out so the players slept exactly as they should, bedrooms personalised with photographs of family to make a far-off hotel feel like home. In India, with one age group team, they printed signs reminding players to wash their hands properly, the very same marginal gains trick that British cycling had used to stop their riders falling ill, and the very trick Woodward had so admired. They went further still, locked down at their training base during one tournament, unable to leave or see their families. The staff set about turning a functional sports centre into somewhere the players actually wanted to be. They filled it with trees and plants until one player walked in and said it was like a forest. They put a juice bar and bean bags and a sofa where the meeting rooms had been and turned the hotel reception into a basketball court. They sent text alerts to the player's phone when the ice cream van arrived, which apparently triggered a stampede. They brought in a barbecue van, had Ed Sheeran round for an evening sing-along and screened the players a preview of the new Top Gun film months before anyone else could see it. None of it, on the face of it, is football. All of it is about the environment engineered so that happy, relaxed players play better. We are all products of our environment. Woodward knew it in 1999 and they know it now. And when the senior squad needed to recover and relax after a game at the last World Cup, someone bought a set of inflatable unicorns and had these grown men, these internationals, racing around across the hotel swimming pool on them. It looked like a children's birthday party. It was in fact the critical non-essentials. Recovery and happy mood, togetherness, engineered and dressed up as fun. So to summarise, in this chapter we've looked at critical non-essentials, the things that look as though they couldn't possibly matter, but are precisely where the edge is hiding. The eye coach, the egg whites, the cappuccino machine, having the pitch in the hotel. No single improvement is too small to bother with. You cannot leap 30% in one go, but you can stack 30 gains of 1%. Raise everything around your people, the pitch, the food, the bed, the welcome, because people quietly rise to meet the standards of their surroundings. And be entirely willing to look ridiculous in the process. An eye coach, a marquee, a man racing an inflatable unicorn, all in pursuit of an edge that everyone else is too proud or too lazy to chase. I know I once said to Clive Woodward, "People say you're half madman, half genius. What do you think about that?" And he replied, "They're only half right." A fabulous reply. And really anyone creative, anyone trying to change the way things are done, every maverick everywhere is told at some stage that they're mad, until they win and then they're a genius. What Clive understood and what Gareth Southgate's England has learned and is now starting to show us is that you don't win with one grand stroke but 1,000 tiny ones, and you win in the humility to bother with every single one. Next time we're going to take a look at the people. Because you can have the plan and you can have the detail and still get it badly wrong if you put the wrong human beings in the room. So we'll look at how winners choose exactly who stands beside them and how ruthlessly they move the wrong people on. I'll see you then.